So as we continue to consider the Ten Commandments, we have reached the sixth of the Ten Commandments. And who remembers the first five? Who remembers where we divide them into two halves?
Between 4 and 5.
Between the fourth and fifth commandments. So the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods besides me, which in a word means that we should be ready and willing to give up anything, everything, rather than displease God in any way. Second commandment is, shall not make for yourself any graven images. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Which means that one should not try to attempt to make any visual depiction of God, an image of God. And we shouldn't worship God in any way other than how God has commanded us to worship Him. The third commandment is, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Which means that we must always use God's name reverently, weightily. We must live a life so that our yes means yes and our no means no. The fourth commandment is to remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy, which means that on the Sabbath we should devote as much of our day as we can to worship, both public and private, and we should refrain from all lawful work except what is necessary or merciful. Works of necessity and mercy. And then the fifth commandment. So we've moved from loving the Lord our God, with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, to how do we love our neighbor as ourselves. And the fifth commandment is to honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. Which effectively means that everyone needs to fulfill their duties and obligations in relation to others, whether they're in a superior position, like parents to their children, or an inferior position, like children to their parents, or a relationship of equals, like a man to his neighbor. We have to fulfill our duties and obligations in all of those relationships as they pertain. So now we come to the sixth commandment, which is,
Thou shalt not kill.
shall not kill, or you shall not murder. So, the VeggieTales guy has been talking about the sixth commandment lately, trying to make it more nuanced as it applies to the discussion over abortion. It's really not a nuanced commandment. You shall not kill, you shall not murder. So, I'm actually going to use the Westminster Shorter Catechism first. Its answer is a lot shorter than our Orthodox Catechisms. So if there's one that you can really just fix in your memory, I think it's the Shorter Catechism. So it asks, what is required in the sixth commandment? And the answer, the sixth commandment requires all lawful endeavors to preserve our own life and the life of others. So then what is forbidden in the sixth commandment? The sixth commandment forbids the taking away of our own life or the life of our neighbor unjustly, or whatsoever tends thereunto, tends towards the taking away of the life of our neighbor. So, the sixth commandment commands us to value life, our own life and others' lives. To do everything we can lawfully to preserve our own life and the life of others. And to not do anything that would unjustly take away our own life or the life of another. So, So we're all prone to sophistry. All right, so well, I didn't kill this person. I just didn't provide them with food. If it's something that you're obligated to provide them with food. All right, so it's not enough to just, okay, well, my hand didn't strike the killing blow. I'm not responsible for it. If you are doing something that would tend to the death of another person, you're still responsible for it. And it goes beyond just the physical act of murder. So if you look in the bulletin in the Orthodox Catechism, question and answer 120, says, what is God's will for you in the Sixth Commandment? It says, I'm not to belittle, insult, hate, or kill my neighbor, not by my thoughts, my words, my look, or gesture, and certainly not by actual deeds. And I'm not to be party to this in others. Rather, I'm to put away all desire for revenge. I am not to harm or recklessly endanger myself either. Prevention of murder is also why government is armed with the sword. Jesus taught this in Matthew chapter 5, that if you speak to your brother with contempt, if you look upon him with hatred, you're already guilty of murder in your heart. And that's what we do when we hate our neighbors, even if because of the government, okay, I'm not going to murder him, but man, I wish he was dead. Then we're guilty of violating the Sixth Commandment. Because if you look at question 121, does this commandment refer only to killing? No, by forbidding murder, God teaches us that he hates the root of murder: envy, hatred, anger, vindictiveness. In God's sight, all such are murder. So, then 122. Is it enough then that we do not kill our neighbor in any such way? Is it enough to, okay, I want to be vindictive, but I'm not going to be vindictive? So no, by condemning envy, hatred, and anger, God tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves, to be patient, peace-loving, gentle, merciful, and friendly to them, to protect them from harm as much as we can, and to do good even to our enemies. So again, on this, even though the Westminster Shorter Catechism had a very shorter, different answer, it's running along the same lines of thought. Right, because again, the Westminster Shorter Catechism said that it requires you to do everything lawful to preserve your own life and the lives of others. Right? Others, not just yourself and your family. As you have power to do so, to do good even to your enemies. If you see your enemy hungry, you should feed him. If you see him naked, you should clothe him. If you see him being unjustly accused by the masses, by the mob, right, and you should speak up for him. You shouldn't just be glad that someone else is taking care of him for me. I don't have to get my hands dirty with this. So, where does this apply in our lives today? I don't think that many of us are strongly tempted to physically kill someone else in our lives. Does that mean that we don't have to really worry about the Sixth Commandment? So what are some practical ways?
Well, we have a culture of death. The people that hate God love death, and so they keep pushing it. So they're going to keep pushing not only more and more brutal ways of abortion, but then farther and farther along as the child's out of the womb, they're going to keep pushing and trying to normalize even peaceful ways of killing yourself, and also a sense of that it's a duty to society. That goes under this commandment. Those are things that I think we often don't think of, but that they're antithetical to what God wants. So those are just some of the things.
Right. So in the cases of abortion, and I mean, right, some states have really gone so far as to at least advocate for infanticide. I'm not sure that a law has been passed allowing that yet, but governors have spoken approvingly of it. So we have the obligation to do everything we can to preserve the lives of others, which means speaking against these laws and assisted suicide, to speak against those laws, to do everything we can to preserve those lives. In ancient Rome, unwanted babies were just left lying in the streets. And so every night Christians would go and pick them up and raise them. I wish we were still at that point, instead of the point where they're actively murdering their children. But we are obligated by the Sixth Commandment to speak for the unborn, to do what we can. Both, in how we vote, and in our conversations, and our actions, to preserve all those lives. Our country is living in flagrant disregard of the Sixth Commandment. And I think that's definitely the area that's the most difficult for us. Because as we seek to preserve innocent lives, and we're accused of being hateful and controlling and oppressive. Because we don't want people to be killed. But then also, we need to be watchful for and resist the temptation to be hateful in our hearts towards others, especially towards our enemies. There are evil people in the world, and we shouldn't flinch from calling them evil and calling their actions evil. But at the same time, we can't begin to hate them. We have to be gentle, merciful, and patient with them. We have to protect them from harm as much as we can, even as they're doing their evil. Which is very, very difficult. Now, especially when we have a culture, a world, and a drunken stupor, not knowing where it should go, that says, well, to love them means you have to affirm them in what they're doing. Right? We love sinners by calling them to repentance. So we have to watch out for our own hearts in this. And then the Westminster Larger Catechism is, again, much longer, but I think it's worth reading and considering. So the duties required in the Sixth Commandment are all careful studies and lawful endeavors to preserve the life of ourselves and others, by resisting all thoughts and purposes, subduing all passions, and avoiding all occasions, temptations, and practices which tend to the unjust taking away of the life of any. Right, so we were talking earlier about workplace safety and biblical laws about putting a parapet barrier around the edge of your rooftop, right? And that's an application of the Sixth Commandment. That's why we should do that, not because I have any intention of luring someone up to my roof so that they can fall off, but because I'm under obligation to avoid the opportunities where someone's life might be lost. So we avoid those occasions and temptations and practices. Also, we fulfill the Sixth Commandment by the just defense thereof against violence, by patiently bearing the hand of God, by quietness of mind, cheerfulness of spirit, a sober use of meat, drink, physic, that's medicine, sleep, labor, and recreations, by charitable thoughts, love, compassion, meekness, gentleness, kindness, peaceable, mild, and courteous speeches and behavior, forbearance, readiness to be reconciled, patient bearing and forgiving of injuries, and requiting good for evil, comforting and succoring the distressed, and protecting and defending the innocent. So there's two things I wanted to point out from there. One, the sober use of meat, drink, medicine, sleep, labor, and recreation. Right, so all those things, we should use in the amount that they're necessary for life and health. We shouldn't be gluttons, but we also shouldn't starve ourselves. We shouldn't be sluggards, but we also shouldn't push ourselves to only sleep 2 hours a night because there's so much we have to get done. Right? We shouldn't be working 90. What is that? 24 times 7. We shouldn't work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we also shouldn't, live for the weekends and live for recreation. All these things should be geared towards preserving the life of ourselves and others. And then also, all of these catechisms have emphasized not just are we obligated to not unjustly take the lives of others, but we're obligated to protect and defend the innocent as we are able, right? Which differs depending on who you are and where you are and what position you hold. But it's probably 10 years ago now, John Piper wrote an essay about what he would do if someone broke into his house with the intent of injuring him and his family. And Piper argued that since he and his family were Christians, that he wouldn't do anything that might harm or kill the intruder. And Piper will tell you that he's disagreeing with the catechism there. I just want to, he's disagreeing with the history of the Reformed and Protestant Church and their understanding of the Sixth Commandment. Because it's not about saying that, well, my life is more important than this guy's life, or saying, certainly not saying that, I'm not ready to die and be with Jesus. It's about protecting and defending the innocent. That we're not supposed to have a Christian pacifism that extends to allowing evil men to kill innocent people because I'm not willing to defend them. We ought to, as we are able, protect and defend the innocent. And then the next question in the larger catechism, what are the sins forbidden in the Sixth Commandment? Again, these are all running parallel lines. The sins forbidden in the Sixth Commandment are all taking away the life of ourselves or of others, except in the case of public justice, lawful war, or necessary defense. So those are, and I think they're right. Those are the three exceptions, or the three circumstances where we can lawfully and without sinning take the life of another. Public justice, so when someone has been found by a lawful government, has been found guilty of a crime deserving of death, then it's not a violation of the Sixth Commandment to kill a murderer, to execute a murderer. Lawful war and necessary defense. So, necessary defense means a situation where it is necessary to take someone else's life to preserve and protect someone innocent. In the Old Testament law, there's a case given of, if an intruder's broken into your house, and it says if you strike him at night, you're not guilty. But if the sun has risen on him, then you can't kill him. So the idea behind that, what it's saying is, when he's in your house at night, he's stealing your possessions, he's a danger to you and your family, you can strike him and kill him. But once he's run away from the house, you find him the next morning, and hey, that's my shepherd's crook. You're the thief who broke into my house. Then you call the police for us, or call the elders of the town together. Then, right, and you deal with him judiciously. You don't have the right. Once he's no longer an immediate threat to you and your family, you can't then kill him. Only when it's necessary to defend yourself or others can you lawfully take someone else's life. But it also forbids the neglecting or withdrawing the lawful and necessary means of preservation of life. And this is more, we don't have a lot of opportunities as private middle-class citizens to neglect or withdraw the necessary means of preservation of life from others. But governors, mayors, parliaments certainly do and have. When they make it difficult or impossible for people to support themselves, when they make people dependent upon the government for their continued existence, they're violating the Sixth Commandment when they're withdrawing the means of the preservation of life. And then there's a further list of sinful anger, hatred, envy, desire of revenge, all excessive passions, distracting cares, immoderate use of meat, drink, labor, and recreations, provoking words, oppression, quarreling, striking, wounding, and whatsoever else tends to the destruction of the life of any. So, and we have a very limited ability to affect our own society at large. No matter how much, we can tell people that this or that is harmful and destructive of life, and probably not going to listen to us. But we should still do all that we can to not promote what leads to the destruction of the life of any. And we should not do such things ourselves. So for us, again, I think it's important for us to consider what we can do, what we ought to do in our own spheres to preserve the lives of others. I think we've got down pretty well about not unjustly taking the lives of others, including the attitudes of hatred. Even if it's hard for us to do, we understand that. But again, there's the active obligation to do what we can to preserve, protect, and defend the innocent. Which it's going to vary a lot. It's based on who we are and where we are and who we interact with. But we should look at how can we preserve the lives of others with what we have and what's been given to us. So that is the Sixth Commandment. Again, I don't know any of these commandments that aren't wildly out of step with our culture. This is certainly one of the most egregious examples. But our hope's not in the godliness of our country, but in the grace of our God. So, are there any questions or comments on the Sixth Commandment? Okay. Let's